Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, we have some testing requirements changes again. We have new cruise ships getting ready to start. We have cruise ports deciding whether or not they're going to allow the cruise ships. It's a whole bunch of stories. First off, let's talk about the Carnival Magic, where passengers were delayed disembarkation in Amber Cove in the Dominican Republic because they had reported to the Amber Cove that they had a couple crew members who had tested positive on their ship. And they said, well, before you let anybody off, we want more information. So passengers were left waiting to disembark, and it took a couple hours for them to get clearance, and finally they started allowing some passengers. However, they said anyone who was unvaccinated was not allowed to get off the ship. Also, some of the restrictions there were saying you couldn't go to beaches in some cases. Well, Amber Cove is pretty known for their beaches, so that kind of let a little steam out of that excursion. So a lot of people were saying that maybe you should keep an eye on this from now on, because different cruise ports and different Caribbean islands and that might just start saying, hey, if you have cases on board, your restrictions might change for getting off the ship. It's that fluid. Everything is changing that quickly right now. Another thing that's changing that we announced yesterday, Carnival Cruise Line said that they're going to start next weekend. I believe they're not starting until the Monday, but that might have been just a misquote from John. It could be he kept on saying the weekend, so don't take anything for granted. Check with the cruise lines. But Carnival Cruise Line says their testing is no longer 72 hours, it's going to be 48 hours. There's no tests at the port set up yet, and now MSC says beginning in November, all the cruise ships sailing out of United States will also be only 48 hours. You know, the other cruise lines can't be far behind. Unfortunately, also yesterday, John also, while announcing that the new testing regimen will go to 48 hours, he also tried to say, hey, look how well we're doing. We're going to have 13 of our ships sailing by the middle of November, and he's spinning it a positive way and everything, and in the same light, he then announced that many of the cruise line ships were going to be canceled. Many of them won't start until 2022 now, including starting in Port of Mobile. So yeah, there was some good news as far as some ships restarting, but a lot of bad news for Carnival resident. I had also just announced that Princess had canceled 2 restarts on 2 of their ships, including the Island and the Diamond Princess, until next year. Now we also have Cunard, who have postponed the start of one of her ships for later on in the year as well. So again, things are changing. Another thing I'm noticing is, because of the ship redeployments, they're trying to get larger ships into places where normally there would be a smaller ship, because they're starting the larger ships first because you have more space, more capacity, more ways to put more people and spread them out. It's easier to do this during the pandemic. And so some of the smaller ships are being changed out for larger ships. Now that sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a great plan. However, some of the cabins available on smaller ships aren't necessarily available on the larger ships, because these larger ships aren't necessarily built the same way the older ships and the smaller ships were. So keep an eye on your cruise to see if even your ship has changed. Not just necessarily your cruise is canceled or postponed or anything like that. You might not even be on the same ship anymore, and your cabin might not even be the same cabin anymore. You have to keep an eye on that as well. Now quickly, before I get into a little bit better news stories, let me just invite you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Really does help the channel out. It tells YouTube that people are watching the video. It spreads it out to more people, and thus gets more views and more eyeballs on the channel, which again helps it immensely, and I would really, really appreciate it. Now, starting in only 2 days, on September 5th, the Oasis of the Seas will set sail. And that will mark half of the Royal Caribbean fleet will have started up again. So they're at their halfway mark, which means they're doing pretty well considering everything that's going on. So yeah, an Oasis class ship setting sail along with the Allure is a good sign. Like I said, they're going large, they're going with the big ships and trying to get as many people on there while still being able to social distance and spread people out. But that's a good sign when you get the Oasis sailing out of another port on the East Coast. We can only hope we get more and more going instead of more and more postponements. And now a really important cruise port. We have British Virgin Islands. They have a testing regimen there that is different from many of the other ports that the cruise ships visit. They require all visitors to take a test when you arrive in the cruise port. And the cruise lines have said, you know what, this is kind of unworkable now. First of all, the space you have is very, very small and will take a long time to funnel through all the passengers who need to get a test, get the test results back, and then get to go to wherever they're going. It's an unworkable situation. It would increase the cost to the passengers. It would increase the time of the passengers. It would limit the time in the cruise port. And passengers are already upset that they have to get tested before they get on the ship and show proof of vaccine. And now to say that, oh, by the way, you're going to have to get tested again when you get just to go to this cruise port. A lot of passengers would say and kind of balk at that and saying, you know what, too much is too much. It's no longer a cruise. It's now a testing cruise. It's no longer a vacation. So the cruise lines went to the British Virgin Islands government and said, this is unworkable. Please come up with a different situation. And they had till Thursday to come up with a solution. And a vote was held last night, an emergency meeting, but they haven't told us what the result is yet. And the cruise lines have basically said, if this stays in place, then we're going to have to probably choose other destinations and other cruise ports. In fact, many of our passengers would just prefer to stay out at sea instead of having to go through all the testing requirements that you're requiring to visit your town. Now, of course, a lot of the tourism industry in the British Virgin Islands is saying, hey, you know what? The CDC just announced the new changes that you're going to get tested 2 days before getting on the ship. So they get on the ship in 2 days and they spend 1 day at sea and they arrive at the British Virgin Islands. Does it really make sense to have to take a test again? We need the cruise ships. We need the money. What happens if the pandemic goes on for 4, 5, 6 years? Does that mean we're never going to work again until the pandemic's over? We're going to keep saying no to everybody. And so a lot of people are putting that point out as saying at some point you have to learn to live with this virus safely as possible. And some of the restrictions they're putting on, they're not real happy with, but we'll see what happens. The vote came out yesterday. We're going to see eventually they're going to announce what that actual decision was. But for some reason, they came out of the meeting and said, yes, the vote was held. Well, what was it? Well, we'll let you know. Well, I think they're going to be going to the cruise lines and saying, hey, what about this idea? And if the cruise lines say, okay, that's more workable, then they'll probably make the announcement. But they're very, very keeping it hush-hush right now. So, yeah, what do you guys think about that? Would you got to get tested before you get there, get on the ship. In some cruise lines cases, you have to get tested before you show up, and then you get tested at the port anyway. And now they're going to tell you got to get tested at the next cruise port that you stop in. That sounds like an awful lot of testing. And I know it sounds like, hey, you know what? You're safer. You're safer. That sounds really good, except one thing. If you're going on a 5-6 day cruise and now you're testing 3 times, 4 times during that cruise, and you have to line up and schedule it to do that, it just seems like it's not worth the trouble. And that's what the cruise lines are pointing out to the British Virgin Island government. So we'll see what they say in the future. Let me know in the comments down below. Was your cruise canceled? Would you do that test for the British Virgin Islands? Or would you choose a cruise that doesn't go to the British Virgin Islands just so you don't have to do that? It's a lot of stuff going on. Once again, and again, one more time, check your cruise regularly. Check to see if it's canceled. Check to see the testing requirements. Test to see the vaccine requirements. Check to see if you're on the same ship and in the same cabin. Check, 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 check. That's my biggest advice to everybody out there. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.